welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show with Yolanda and Smith, the Banter. Like always, we always have some exciting guests on the show, exciting stories about education, overcoming, you name it, we're bringing it to you. Today is no exception to the rule. Good friend of mine, I can honestly say she's a good friend of mine now, shared her story with me. I was deeply moved, motivated, inspired, and I remember telling her, you got to share this story. And not only is she here to share her story, but she's also going to share with us her new ventures that she's basically starting. And without further ado, welcome to the Andre the Beast Crayton Show, the one, the only, Abby Smiley Krause. Did I get it right, Abby?
You got it. You nailed it. Good job.
Hey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Let's get right down to it. Tell the viewers about Abby.
I'm a Libra. I like long walks on the beach. No, I'm just kidding.
I like that intro.
That's such a big question. I'm sure everybody feels the same way I do when somebody asks you such a question that could go many different directions. But if I had to answer it in a short version, I would say Abby Smiley Krause is a woman who has a story like everybody, who has had challenges, who has had triumphs in life, who has gotten knocked down on her ass a million times, but has got up 1,000,001. So,
yeah.
So I would say that in the short version of it, that's who I am and who I stand for.
You share with me one thing people need to realize. You're in Florida right now. And I told you I live in Florida, but you are a native Hoosier.
I am a Hoosier girl.
Let's start there. How do we go from Indiana to Florida to where we're at now?
So I loved Indiana growing up. It was a great place to grow up, but I never felt I was going to be there long term. And my parents had always vacationed down here because my grandparents, before they passed, lived here.
Right.
So they decided to move here early. They had not retired. They did it before they had pulled that trigger. And I packed my bags and said, I'm coming with you. I don't want to meet a man and get stuck here.
Right.
So I moved here in 98.
Okay.
When I was 23.
Okay. So you mentioned about your stay in Indiana. Did a lot of the traumas that you went through that you shared with me, did they start in the Indiana area with your schooling, college? Take me down that road a little bit.
They did. So I grew up, I was I had a mouth on me, but for the most part, I was really a good teenager and a straight A student. I had won Miss Teenage Indiana, and I had just started my freshman year, actually at Ball State University.
Okay.
And my freshman year, I was set up on a date. And that night I was actually raped. And it was a traumatic experience, as you can imagine,
right,
that really changed the path and trajectory of my life.
When you mentioned you was assaulted, and I know people say rape, but that even sounds even worse.
Yeah.
You was 18 years old, college. Who do you share this with? Like, take me in what you was going through. I know that's difficult, but how did you overcome this? This is something that I wouldn't wish on anybody, but unfortunately it happened to you. How do you keep moving?
So it was one of the most challenging times of my life, as you can imagine, because I actually kept it pretty secret. There were very few people I told about. I was ashamed that it had happened, and so I really kept it inside. And that was the point where I actually started to use food as a vice. That was my comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started a really dysfunctional relationship with food, and actually had gained about 40 pounds my freshman year.
Wow.
And my aunt, who was a bodybuilder at the time, looked at me and was like, "What? You look like a little fatty, Abby. What's up?" Because I've always been thin.
Right.
And that was when I got launched into the world of fitness, was after that traumatic event had happened.
Was there a reason that you, I hear a lot of women say that they kept this stuff internally and never exposed it, but even more shocking, your assault was not just one individual, it was two. How do you
It was actually
really,
three.
three?
It was actually three.
How
It
do
was
you, I can't even begin to imagine like how somebody can even navigate, keep that internally. You use food as a coping mechanism. When did you feel the need to really, when was the time for you to share the information and the pain that you was going through, and who did you actually share it with?
so I did use food, and I also used alcohol. Lots of alcohol, as a lot of freshmen do in college, drink excessively. Anyway, I took it up a notch because of the
Okay.
incident that happened. Um, it was years later, as I got married and had a failed marriage. Um, I just, it was like I had tucked it away for so long. And I realized as I grew older and more mature that it was really affecting my life much deeper than I probably realized. And so at that time, I did share it with some very close people in my life, and I did seek therapy. And that helped me immensely. I really started doing a lot of work inwardly, reading some books, working out, and learning to love myself again. Because I think a lot of women can identify that when something so tragic like that happens, especially when you were such a good girl and you're just ashamed and you feel bad about yourself and you kind of blame yourself. And so when I, took in therapy and took in accountability of what had actually happened, then and only then was I able to digest it all and use it to allow myself to grow and push forward in my
Help the
life.
viewers understand. You use the key word here, accountability, and
Mhm.
clarify that a little bit for the individuals, because it's not like you put yourself in harm's way. So when you say accountability, you're not saying you did something wrong. So could you clarify that just a little bit from what you mean with that word?
When I say accountability, I had shared with you before, I wasn't a drinker when I was in high school. And this gentleman and his friends were about 4 or 5 years older than me at the time. When you're 18 years old, 4 to 5 years older, that's a difference
Yeah.
in life. So I felt guilty because I had drank during that night, and I kind of blame myself because of that, because I had my guard down.
Mhm.
And obviously, it doesn't matter if I drank to complete inebriation, no one deserves to be taken advantage of like that.
Correct.
So, accountability in that regard, but also just accepting what had actually happened, like really accepting it and knowing it was not my fault, and that I needed to move on from it. I deserve to have a better life and release it.
Did law enforcement or support groups come out, or you just kept it internally?
No, so what had happened was my friends knew I was going out on this date, and I had not returned home that evening, and back to my dorm, I should say. And so they were really worried about me, and they came and they found me. And I was obviously intoxicated from when I was with these gentlemen, and
When you said they found you, where were you at that they found you?
at this gentleman's house that he was sharing with quite a few other men. He had several roommates. And so they found me, and it was obvious something had happened just with the way that my clothing and everything was. So they knew about it. But I just wanted to go back to my dorm. I wanted to go to bed. I wanted to forget about it. And in no way did I want to call the police and have them involved. Now, in today's day and time, if something like that happened to me, it's a different story. But you're really still a child at
Mhm.
that age, and I was so innocent and naive. And like I said, just feeling this huge amount of guilt and shame and self blame. I did not want any attention drawn to it whatsoever, and therefore the cops were not called.
What about your support group? Your mom, your dad, your siblings?
I never even told any of them. I was so ashamed that I never even shared that that happened. It was about, by the time I told my mom and dad, it was approximately 6 years after it had happened.
So you lived in a code of silence for many years.
Yep. And I just dealt with it through food and drinking
Tell
and
me about
depression.
how did it affect your first marriage? You mentioned that you got married. This
Mm-hmm.
has to be back up a minute. You're getting ready to get married.
Mm-hmm.
You're keeping the traumatic effect of the assault from multiple guys that went one night.
Mm-hmm.
How do you even concept even looking at men, let alone getting married? Take me down that.
Well, I think a lot of women can also identify with what I'm going to reply with is that when you feel like ashamed of yourself, I actually had become very promiscuous, during my freshman year of college.
Okay.
And because I was drinking, it was like I just had no self-worth and value of myself because of what had transpired. So when I moved here with my parents, I literally met my first husband 8 months after I moved here. And I grew up in both my parents were married till the day my dad passed away a couple of years ago, 52 years. So I just wanted to be married. And I had shared the event with my first husband, pretty early on in the relationship.
What was
But
his take? What was his
oh, he
take?
wanted to go kill him. He wanted to find him and kill
Okay.
them.
Okay.
But I just wanted to be normal.
Okay. How was the first marriage? Well, how did it
So the first
effects
marriage,
of that went into the marriage and so forth? I mean, like you still haven't really opened up. You're still harboring, but you're married because you figure, hey, maybe this will change who I am.
yeah,
What happened?
right. And I just wanted to be married and move on with my life. So my first husband, he was a great guy. He's the father of my son. So for that, I'm forever blessed that I met him.
Okay.
But we really just, my son, he's 23 now. He like laughs. He's like, we got divorced when he was only 3. And he's like, I can't even imagine you and my dad together because we're so, so different. And we really should never have gotten married. We got married 8 months after we met. So we really didn't know each other at all.
When you say
So
different, tell the viewers what when people always say different. What do you consider you were so different? What was he like? What was you like? And remember the age factor at this time too, so people need to understand how old you were, and then what was the difference between the two that you didn't even see, and now you look at it and go, "Wow, you know what? We were really different."
yeah. And I knew it actually pretty soon after my son was born. I remember rocking him and going, oh my gosh, what have I done? Um, my first husband, we were only a couple years difference in age. He's a couple years older than me. He's a very strong, opinionated guy, very confident, but introverted. And I have always been pretty outgoing, extroverted, and extremely ambitious. Like I have always excelled at everything because I put that pressure on myself.
Right.
So when I was in my early 20s, I was like, he had just a mediocre job, and which was great. He was working, so that was wonderful. I was waiting tables at the time, but you have to remember I was a pre-med major when I was in college, and won Miss Teen Indiana, and I had big goals in
Right.
my life.
Right.
And I felt that when I was with him, because he just was just this average cool guy, which is great, but I've never been an average person. Like I wanted more than that.
Right. Right.
And so that's when I knew this just was not going to work out.
Okay. So you divorced. Then what's the next journey after that?
So I met my second husband almost immediately after that, which was
Okay.
really, which was not a good idea because obviously you should take time and heal through stuff. And I did not
How
do
long
that.
of a time did you take before you jumped in?
Literally, my divorce wasn't even final and I had already met him.
Wow. Well, he
So
wasn't dry yet.
No. So, but I was with the second husband for 16 years. He's an amazing person, just an amazing person. And I can't say one bad thing about either of them. But we grew apart. You know, I was running a day spa. I was in school getting my bachelor's. I had a teenager at the time, and something's going to go on the back burner. And unfortunately, it was my marriage with my second husband. So
Tell me about we shared a little bit about now all of a sudden everything, there was a moment in your life where everything started to crumble from you're successful with the day spa, you got a business and going. Tell the viewers what happened. Now something else transpired into your life.
yeah. So when I had the day spa, it was a great amount of pressure because I didn't have a whole lot of capital to work with. So I was really crunching numbers to make it work. And I put a lot of pressure on myself, and it was doing well. But between my marriage crumbling, and I actually started to suffer from clinical depression. I was clinically diagnosed with depression. And at that time, they were putting me on a multitude of different medications.
When did you
Literally,
realize that you was falling into the state of depression? And then what were some of those things that triggered you? And then you said, oh my God, I need to get help. And then boom, you've been diagnosed.
so it was 2018. I started drinking to cope with
So
everything,
you went
and
back to what happened to you in your college years, basically, the coping mechanism.
kind of you repeated the same pattern. So when I was
Okay.
triggered with stress, I went back to my old friends, alcohol and food. I wasn't working out at that time because I barely had time to shower between being in school, getting my bachelor's, running a day spa, raising a teenager, and being married. So I fell back into my really pattern of very bad behavior. And just it was not a good thing. And my ex-husband really tried to help me. I went to a psychologist, I went to therapy, and they were so rapid fire with the medication. I remember in 2018, I think it was, they
Mhm.
changed my medication from February to September like 19 different times. So I was like a zombie, like literally, like not even myself.
So they didn't really
And
even get to the root before they start firing off prescriptions.
right, because the previous medication really hadn't even had a chance to perform, and they were already. It was a very bad psychiatrist that I had come into contact with, and my mom tore her apart. But the fact is that I just wanted to be fixed, and I think when people suffer from clinical depression, you'll do anything to get
Right.
out of it because it's like living in the depths of hell. And so I just wanted somebody to give me a label. I was diagnosed as bipolar at that time. I almost played into it. I don't know if I'm bipolar. I really don't think I am, but I wanted to play into something so they could give me the medicine, I could take it and be better and just move on.
Mhm.
But that's not the way that it worked.
Okay.
So I chose to get a divorce. It was a mutual decision. And in 2019, I moved into my own place. It was the first time I lived by myself in 20 years. I closed my day spa. My son left the nest. He graduated from high school. My dad passed away shortly after that. And then I got into a really toxic relationship. I mean, after I got divorced the second time, I was on all the dating apps, went back to drinking because then COVID hit.
Mhm.
So
It wasn't too
it was
long
like
ago
a
now.
country song. My life was like a country song. I'm like, oh. So I ended up with this gentleman, dated him off and on, mostly on for about 3 years. And it was extremely toxic. And it actually ended up being a physically abusive and mentally, emotionally abusive relationship that
When you
really.
say when you say toxic, and you're a very intelligent woman, when you saw this thing, it's not like you don't recognize a person that's toxic. It shows
Sure.
within a little bit of space. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Why did you stay for so long?
Well, the reality was I was toxic too at that
Okay.
time because,
Okay.
when I had just gotten divorced and started back to my old friend alcohol and, really feeling bad again about myself, going back into that rabbit hole of depression, and you start to question your value again. So you allow stuff you would not normally allow, behavior and treatment you would not normally allow from other people who you think love you. And that obviously was not the case with the way that this relationship ended very badly.
So how did you overcome it? You just said, okay, I'm done. How did he accept it?
No. So in March of last year, the relationship ended extremely badly. It's like the shit hit the fan, and it had become abusive. He had attacked me, and it's like I heard my dad up in heaven, and he was like, "You've got to stop this, or this is going to end extremely bad for you, Abby." And it's like I heard him talking to me clear as day. So from that moment, I was done. Like, to me, this person was dead to me, and it hurt me so badly because I loved this person. I thought I loved this person. I loved who he portrayed himself to be, which was all a lie. And he was my best friend. So I had to grieve that process of losing my best friend, of accepting the fact that this person who pretended that they loved me would physically hurt me intentionally, emotionally hurt me intentionally. So I got pissed. I got pissed. And so I just looked at myself in the mirror, and I'm like, you know what, Abby, you have a lot of accountability. I'll use that word again. And I did this time, because I was not living the life I should be living. I was drinking too much. I was not taking care of myself. I was not eating good. I was not working out. I was not sleeping well. So yeah, when you do all that bad stuff, your foundation is going to crumble eventually.
How was this
So I
affecting
looked in the mirror and just said, I gotta change.
How was this affecting your son?
Well, my son had already left the nest. So he was already he's living his own life. He didn't even know about a lot of this until
That's what I was
after
gonna
the
say.
fact.
You kept it from him.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to share this crap with your kids. I mean, so he really was kind of kept out of the loop till towards the end, and then he knew he had hurt me and physically hurt me, and was pretty upset about it. But you know, he wasn't in the picture too much with that fact, because he wasn't living with me.
So how do you move on? How does Abby regroup, recover, and be an inspiration to the many women out there that's went through the same outcome?
So I was just talking with that's a great question. I was just talking with my friend last night, and I said, you know what, although this past 18 months, because it's been about 18 months since that relationship ended, was some of the hardest time of my life. Like, I honestly could probably say it was the hardest time of my life in so many ways. And in the same breath, though, it was the best 18 months of my life, because I discovered how strong I really am. So I decided, after that relationship ended, and I got pissed at him, I got pissed at myself, pissed at the way I was living, I thought, the only person who can change this is me.
Yeah.
So I got busy. I stopped drinking, and I started working out. I went back to the good pattern I used to have, which is working out. I've always found solace in the gym. It's been my best friend. It will forever be my best friend. And I started working out and eating good and sleeping great and doing tons of investment in myself, by meaning books. In fact, I have a funny story I'll share with you real quick. So I live right by Barnes and Noble, and every Sunday I would go to Barnes and Noble because I'm looking for that book that's going to fix my life. Right. So I'm in the self-help, and I literally walk through Barnes and Noble every Sunday with like 10 books. And this woman stopped me after about a month of seeing me doing this. And she goes, "Oh my God, you're here like all the time." She goes, "You must be working on a massive project." I go, "I am." I go, "Myself." And so I started buying so many books, I couldn't remember if I bought them. So anyway, I read all kinds of self-help books dealing with guilt, blame, pain, and also knowing that, hey, you know what? If you've been divorced once, you can point the finger, but if you've been divorced twice, you got to kind of use the thumb. You know what I'm saying? Like I got to take some work on myself, because I'll never be able to be in a good, healthy relationship if I don't fix some stuff with myself.
Right.
So I decided I've always wanted to launch my own fitness business. So I got my personal training certification. I got my nutrition certification. I got my strength and conditioning certification, and just started taking webinars this whole past year and learning as much as I could. And I launched Your Fitness Chick March 15th of this year, which was 1 year to the date of the end of that relationship last year. It was the anniversary date.
Yeah, congratulations on that.
Yeah.
So tell me something else you launched. You are also in the process of doing not only the Fitness Chick situation, but you're also in the process of doing your own podcast. And I telling the viewers now, make sure you watch that podcast. It's going to be really good. But tell us about the podcast and what inspired the podcast, what the podcast is going to be about. Share the message.
Okay. So, my passion in life is really helping other people, because when you have been clinically diagnosed with depression and you've been in the depths of hell and you've been through just tons of shit, which who hasn't in this lifetime, right? I want to help people and help as many people as I can to inspire them to know you can come out okay on the other side. You got to do some work, but you can do it. And so that's why I wanted to do the podcast, so I could reach a much larger audience. And so I'm launching that the last week of October. I hired a guy in Indiana to actually help me with that.
Okay.
And
there might be a reason for you to come back to Indiana, because you're outsourcing back to Indiana. You might want to get in the car, get on the plane, and come back home.
I don't think so. No, he actually reached out to me, and ironically, he's the coolest guy. He lives, in Indiana. But so I'm launching that the last week of October, and it's going to be focused not just on fitness, but becoming your best self. And that means everything that ends in the LY, physically, obviously, financially, emotionally, spiritually, all those things that we a lot of times just put ourselves into autopilot mode and go through life and exist. And I want people to really realize they can start living if they address some of the things that they need to and roll up the sleeves and do the work.
If individuals want to reach out to contact you, how do they do that?
So they can reach out to me at support@yourfitnesschick.com. They can also visit my website, which is www.yourfitnesschick.com. I have my own fitness programs and my own app, which can help people reach all their physical fitness goals. And also I have a huge following on Facebook, so they can like my Abby Smiley Krause, follow me on Facebook, and join my Your Fitness Chick group on Facebook.
Sounds good. Abby, leave them with something positive. You've been through a lot. You've overcome. You've inspired. You definitely have been in the pits of hell and came out beautifully. Leave the viewers with something extremely powerful.
The thing that I want to leave everybody with is everybody has a story. I've had some challenges, but there's been people who've had much worse challenges than me. But the reality is, whatever happens in your life, if you look at it with the perception of that it happens for you instead of not to you, and you say, you know what, not what I planned, not loving this area of my life too much, but for whatever reason, I'm supposed to be in it, and I'm going to choose to look at this with big open eyes and a big open mind and say, you know what? How can this make me better? How can I learn from it? And how can I become the best version of myself by taking it all in and running forward with it?
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton.